Okay, all right, great. So let's move on to the very first one. So what's going to happen is actually we're going to take you through the document itself so that it, first of all, it saves time. You don't have to look at it yourselves until you, well, you actually need it. We hope you will look at it, but at least it takes us through. Also, just to say that this document is not an instructional document on how to do recruitment and selection, or how to write a JD, or how to do inductions. These are only covering the areas of recruitment and selection, but what are the safeguarding considerations you need to think about when we do these things? And if you are already doing that, that's really fantastic. We are just starting off on the same footing, which is why we're introducing it. If you're already familiar, that's great. If you actually do processes in addition to this even more, please feel free to share with us. And if you think there are even better processes to add and more vigorous, we're definitely happy to have your suggestions as well. Okay, if you do need more details on how to do the proper recruitment and selection, we will also have all of that on the HR Hub for you. Okay, so let's go. In this document, you'll see there are 3 columns. The first column tells you the area that we are looking at and whose responsibility overall it is. In general, line managers should have overall responsibility for the recruitment and the selection processes of their team. It may be different in each of your countries. Not all of us work in the same way, but in general, this is our recommendation because line managers know the role really well. They know when they need the staff member coming in, they know what goes into the job description, they know all the details. They'll also know best how to do the role risk assessment. The HR personnel ensures the best practice throughout the recruitment selection processes, ensures that the JD includes the person specification, ensures that reference checks are made, ensures that application forms are sent out, and so on. And the DSLs will ensure that all of these considerations are looked through throughout the whole recruitment process. Okay, so moving on down to job description and person specifications. Each of our job descriptions we recommend should have a paragraph and a statement on safeguarding as below. If my screen is too small, please let me know as well. Can you see this in highlighted here?
If you can make it a little bit bigger, Cindy, that'd be great.
Will this work? Okay,
much better.
Great, thank you. Okay, so it's recommended that in each job description, if you don't have already a paragraph that says this is taken from the revised safeguarding policy for TLM, that you can just copy this and put it in your job descriptions. Some have already, some countries have this already. They have even more detailed ones relating to the country as well. And also for some high-risk roles, there are specific lines included to help the job post holder understand, how safeguarding impacts their role and what they need to do as well. But we do recommend that this is the basic and the minimum for all job descriptions to have. Okay, and so line managers should develop and update the job description because they know it best. And has HR reviewed the JD for consistency and good standards, for person specifications to be in there, and also that this is also in there. I'm just gonna stop and see if there's any comments on this. Okay. All right, so just moving on to these job roles and risk assessment. You'll see that there is a link here. If you click the link, it'll take you to glass cubes, okay? And I will do that in a minute. We've covered the job roles risk assessment in our last HR network meeting, but not to worry, we're just going to repeat it right here. Some of us have already used this in our current recruitment and selection processes. We hope you found it easy. It's a very 5-minute task. And then if you haven't already, we would recommend that you use it for all recruitment going forward. But at the same time, we are also recommending that by the end of December, all current roles will also will have been assessed for this template. So we are assessing the roles, the job description. If you have 2 people performing the same job, then you only need to assess it just once. Okay, just for the job role itself. So let me show you. I won't click the link now because I clicked it earlier. It's over here. And this is what the safeguarding role risk assessment looks like. You'll need to fill in the positions and the names of people who are assessing. And then there are very brief statements that you'll need to follow. And the instructions are also quite simple to follow. Just over here. And then after you have assessed it and you've come up with, perhaps it could be a medium or high, the next page will tell us what kind of mitigation actions are needed for each one. So I'm just going to pause for a minute and ask if anyone has used this already, if anybody has found it simple. And I see that Nerida has asked, is it available in Word format? Yes, I think we can make one available in Word format. Sorry, Jane, I don't have a pen right here, but would you be able to make a note?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
And we'll add it. Thanks, Nerida. So could I just have any comments from somebody who's already used this role risk assessment? Has anyone?
I can jump in, and as probably many will gather, at the international office, we tested a number of roles to see whether the document was going to work. So we formed a team and all of us tested the roles through this form. And the first thing that impressed me is how quick and straightforward it is to do. I mean, when you look at the document, you might think, wow, like we need to do this for every role, but literally it takes less than 4 minutes, 3 minutes to kind of go through a role and assess it. So it was just really nice to see. It's simple, it's straightforward, and it just gives you a rate, which allows you to then link with the mitigation measures. So it was really good.
Thank you. That's good to hear. And thank you, Jane, for putting the Word document. It's directly in your chat. You can download it to your computers. And that's the Word version. We'll also add it to Glass Cubes. Has anyone else used it and has feedback on it?
Yes, for Myanmar also, we have used that for our UJD. And it's very easy to use also. And we find it easy and understand. Well, yeah.
Thank you. Great. So that's good to know and good feedback to have as well. So, sorry, was anybody trying to say something?
I think there's a message from Natalie saying she's happy to share.
Oh, yes. Hi, Nat. Please go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, but probably Dorothy should be sharing, but I don't know if she's on. But yeah, we've used this for 2 positions that we're just recently recruiting for. So one was a finance officer, and we decided that they didn't really have much contact with children. So I think they were medium, but then the other one was for a project coordinator, and they definitely got contact with the community, so they ended up with a high score. So yeah, it was quite helpful to use it and to just think through how the project officer might be impacting on the community and others.
Thank you very much. And Doris, yes, you've raised your hand. Do you have a question?
Yes, it's not. Oh yeah.
It's okay.
Okay, it's not a question. Just to say that we also in the team in the DRC, we share it with the senior staff because all of us is a line manager somewhere. So what we find that in the DR, we all staff should not is a high risk, because all of us is a contact with vulnerable people. So it's just what we can see that all of us is a high high level of
high risk.
risk. Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. So that was a realization for the team after doing the assessment, that they're all in the high risk categories. And then there are some mitigations at the bottom that we will see are recommended for those in the high risk as well. Just one more question, and Julia, I see your hand is up.
Yes, I'm at England and Wales. I had a discussion with our Minda, our HR manager, about this, and I'm not sure she's tried it yet. She likes it. My question from her is about the mitigations. One of the mitigations for, I think, medium and high risk is to have 2 rounds of interviews. At the moment, England and Wales doesn't do 2 rounds of interviews, I don't think, for any posts. I'm just really interested in what other people do. Does everybody do 2 rounds of interviews for most posts?
Damaris, I see you unmuted.
Yeah, I think there might be some adjustment on that particular part, because when we designed the form initially, we designed it in line with the global policy, and we had recommended 2 rounds of interviews anyway for high-risk roles. But the feedback on the global policy by the fellowship, a number of countries have actually mentioned that that's not always possible for all roles. So we've slightly modified that, and maybe that means that we need just to kind of make a small adjustment. But whether there is 1 or 2 interviews, which could be the ideal, we will make sure that enough safeguarding questions are integrated within it, so that we assess the risk, and we are able to assess the person's attitudes towards, obviously, their contact with children and vulnerable adults. So in essence, 1 interview might still be allowed, but with high considerations to safeguarding questions.
Brilliant, thanks, Damaris.
Yeah, and actually, maybe just as well to add, so the form that's on the screen now, we did update about 2 weeks ago. So it now says as much as possible 2 interviews, and then it says if not possible, just make sure you take enough time, because I think England and Wales, but also Australia, also Congo, raised the same issue. So we recognise 2 interviews is ideal, but not always realistic. So yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I'll just move us on now to the next part. I'm conscious of being able to cover just a little bit more the time, and we can always come back to your questions as well. So after obviously doing the role risk assessment, when in recruitment and selection, we want to advertise the job. So in the advertisement, one thing that we recommend as well to put in, again, is this statement, which is different from the one in the job description. And it's that the name of your country, TLM country, has 0 tolerance towards any abuse, neglect, and exploitation for all people, and informing any applicant that they will be expected to sign and comply with all our policies, safeguarding policies, including the Code of Conduct and the Global Safeguarding Children Vulnerable Acts policy. So it is basically prevention, deterrent, awareness raising, that we take this very seriously. This is our stand on it, and it is therefore advertised, and for anyone who wants to apply, they can think carefully as well. So we would recommend that if your advertisements are able to put space. I know some advertisements are really tiny in a newspaper and it costs a lot of money, but some of our countries are moving online where you have more margin to put in more text, and we would really strongly recommend that this will be there as well. Okay.
Can I make
yes,
a small comment, Cindy? Just supporting the why of all of this. I mean, I remember like on a safeguarding forum where I was, and it was quite eye-opening for me. They were saying that sometimes what we traditionally call perpetrators, or people that are actually actively seeking to abuse children and vulnerable adults, they are actually looking at job adverts, looking at organizations out there that they can actually come in because they maybe don't have a strong safeguarding procedures, and they just want to come in to actually abuse. Whether it's children, whether it's adults, whether it's others in general. So the fact that we reinforce all these areas that Cindy is telling us about, it just gives them the warning sign. It tells them basically, hey guys, we are not an organization that is going to tolerate this at any stage. So don't even come near us. So it is extremely important, even when we might have the feeling, wow, it's kind of another paragraph in the job description or another analysis of how do we do things. It's actually sending people that are actively seeking to abuse as far as possible from us. We don't want them in our organization. That's the message we are telling them. And it's extremely important that they get that. And not only those that are actively seeking to abuse, but also other people that might just have an inclination to abuse, or a thought, or a tendency. So it's telling them very clearly, we will not tolerate this. Which I thought is important that we think from that perspective, the why we are introducing all these layers.
It's thank you, Damaris, very much for bringing that clarity. It's just the last word. It's trying as much as possible to stop things even before it comes to the door, right? Okay, so I'm going to hand over to Jane so that you have some variety in presenters. But there you go. Over to you, Jane.
Okay, so hopefully you can see the screen. Yeah, okay, good. Okay, so I'm going to just talk about the next 3 items on this kind of guidelines. So the first one is around application packs. And this is really something that I know some of you already do. It's whenever someone applies for a job or someone expresses an interest in a job, then you respond to them by sending them an application pack along with the job description and person specification. So that's really, instead of receiving potentially hundreds of CVs, you're going to the candidates and saying, please, can you complete our application form? And hopefully in doing so, that will actually make it easier for us to do the shortlisting. So I know quite a few of you already have started to do this, and that's great. We have just updated the application form. So hopefully you can see that on the screen. We updated it recently to try and include some more questions around safeguarding. So beforehand, it didn't really refer to safeguarding so much, but we've added a few sections, and what we'd really appreciate you doing is looking at your own application form that you may have, and then seeing if there's anything from this template that you can add to yours in terms of safeguarding to make it better. So as you can see at the very top, we've just added this statement on safeguarding, on confidentiality and data protection, and that's really just so as soon as someone opens the application form, they're going to see, you know, where TLM stands on these things. The next few sections haven't changed too much. They're pretty standard, and probably these are the things that you already are asking applicants to disclose. But then if we go on down, we've added a sentence to say original certificates will be requested if you're invited for interview. So we added that. So in the past, people just had to list all of the qualifications that they had, but now we thought it's good to also ask people to prove their qualifications so that we know that they have genuinely completed them. So we'd like to see people's original certificates going forward. Then on down, again, it's quite similar as to what you'll have seen in the past. It's asking about previous positions and work history. We've asked for that for several, probably for the last 4 or 5 jobs. We'd love to see just where people have worked and in what positions. We've asked them a little bit about what satisfies them, what they find difficult. So all of these things you may already have in your form. But then when it comes down to this bit, we've added, we've asked them to give details of 3 referees. So again, hopefully the current or previous employer and then the one before that, as well as a church or community leader or someone else that they can provide a reference from. Yeah, whenever you're looking at this for yourselves, do check that this form is in line with local legislation in your country, just to check that all of these questions can be asked, because now we're asking the questions specifically around safeguarding. So it would be interesting to know if any of you have already included these questions in your application form. So this section 12, a lot of it is new or reworded just to try and find out more about the applicant. Okay, so we're asking about allegations, we're asking about any prevention from working with children, any convictions, or any alleged offences that are outstanding. Maybe before we move on to the next bit of the form, maybe I'd just love to hear from anyone, given this section 12, would any of you in your countries feel like it was inappropriate to ask those questions? Or do you feel like it would be okay to include those in an application form?
May I go ahead, Jane?
Please, Belle.
So sorry, I don't have that space to raise my hand, so that's why I was thumbs up earlier. Yeah. So yeah, even besides the very benefit that we feel for this, whenever someone see for this, it gives an impression as an organization. It gives an impression that what kind of organization it is. So for me, when I see this and the safeguarding issue earlier, then I was saying, oh, this is it. This is where I'm joining. You know, it just adds some value for the applicant. This is what he was saying. We just hired a program manager recently. So even when I went through the new list, the one that we discussed earlier, so it gave me the chance to see how relevant the safeguarding is with this role. Is he contacting this and that? And again, he mentioned this as well, the guy. So this is wonderful. So I mean, in addition to the very basic benefit, it also gives, you know, added value for the organization, not the differentiation.
Fantastic.
Something I want to say.
Yeah, thank you, Belle, for sharing. I think you're right. I think, you know, if you're applying for a job and this is what you're provided with at the first instance, it does give you an impression, doesn't it, of the organization. And I think, like what Damaris was saying, if someone is applying for a job with ill intent or with a desire to cause abuse or harm, then hopefully even asking these questions at the very first instance will put that person off even applying. So yeah, thank you for sharing, Belle. I think Nat or Dorothy, was it something you'd like to say?
Yeah, there's a comment from Dorothy over there where she's saying that some applicants may be uncomfortable and may question asking, you know, why they're being asked this question when I don't do that. You know, what is our view on that?
Okay, yeah, good question. Anyone like to comment on Dorothy's observation that some people may feel uncomfortable with those questions?
I can make a small comment, which I think I shared at some point in the past. It was not at the application stage level, but actually this year when we had to reappoint board members at the board level. They were not formally applying because the process at board level is slightly different, but we asked them some of these questions, and we asked them to do police checks, and we asked them to tell us if they had actually any criminal conviction. And the feedback from really top level people, and we're talking about Anne Rafley and Dr. Warwick, it was very positive. They said they were delighted that we're taking this very seriously. My question would be more, if someone is reluctant to be open about this type of questions, could be a question mark in my mind. It'd be why someone would be reluctant when they should see this as a protection. So I would be really in between two minds about someone being reluctant. Having said this, and answering to maybe the question that Jane, you opened up at the beginning, and that's where we talk about contextualizing. There might be laws in different countries that tell us that some of those questions shouldn't be asked. And for example, that's the case in the UK. In the UK, we cannot ask for people to disclose spent convictions, because the law protects the criminal that has already paid off for their crime. So if someone did a crime when they were, I don't know, 20 years of age, they went to jail for it and they paid off, the law protects them to not have to disclose that in the future. So when that's the case, in our case in the UK, we would respect the law and not ask for those convictions. But anything that the law allows us, and not only allows us, but from a safeguarding perspective, we are encouraged to discuss openly. Again, I'd be reluctant for someone not to want to answer that question. It could be a small warning sign for us as recruiters, for us as HR people through the process.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Damaris. Yeah, good reminder about we need to just contextualize it for our own country. Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Doris, as well. You've said it's good to use the form because all applicants will have completed the same information and it standardizes the process. So yeah, I think we're probably all in agreement. It's really good to use the form, and maybe following today, it'd be great if people could go away and just look at these questions and other elements, including the bit about, you know, checking 3 references. I think on up above the bit about educational certificates, you know, just see if you can add those to your forms. That would be really helpful to do. Doris, do you have another comment? No? Doris, I just saw your hand up. I wondered if you had something to share.
The applicant gave us, yeah, some give more information, and some other give just some information. So we, even in the interview, yeah, when we are asking questions, so you see that to some you can ask more, and to other one you ask just a few questions. This kind of application will help us to have the same question for all applicants, and it's a 20-20, I think.
Yes, thank you. Thanks, Doris, for sharing. And I know you've recently done some recruitment in Congo, so you've got recent experience of using this, so thank you. Yeah.
I'd like to probably add a thought which kind of came to my mind as we are discussing this also. It's also really important that as HR people that are involved in the recruitment process, we are aware that not because someone has disclosed a criminal record, that will disqualify them automatically from the job. It will actually, 9 out of 10 will not disqualify them for the job. But we will just have to look at it and consider how does it impact the job. So maybe there is a word of reassurance there, just following again, I think it was Doris' comment, yeah, that not because someone disqualifies a criminal record, not because someone discloses a criminal record, sorry, that will not disqualify them from the role. So it is kind of finding the balance between assessing the information and having that information to see how that will impact the role, and particularly if they are, of course, in contact with children and vulnerable adults. It might just simply mean that we need to adjust certain things in the role. It just simply need, maybe we need to discuss certain area of how they are going to perform a role, considering that in the past maybe they had a certain experience. It might just mean that we have to explore certain things more, but it will not always, and it will not most of the times, disqualify them from the role. And another thing that I think is really important to consider is that these will be always kept strictly confidential. So it will only be the HR person and maybe one other person, the safeguarding person or a key hiring manager that will actually be aware of that information. It should not go anywhere else. It should be kept confidential.
Yeah, thank you, Damaris. I think that's a really good point about whatever someone's past has been, it doesn't necessarily disqualify them from employment with TLM, depending on the nature. So I think I'm even considering maybe we could even add a disclaimer to the bottom of the form to reassure people, because maybe if someone has a minor criminal offence, seeing this, it could even put them off. So yeah, we need to have a bit of thought on that as well. So thanks for just reminding us of that. It's important. Okay, Melvin, you had a comment there that declarations shouldn't be part of the form. Do you want to say anything about that? I think it's good to hear from India's perspective.
Yeah, see, job application form is not confidential form that goes to our record, and it, several people can access. Declaration form can be a separate form, which we follow in India. Mm-hmm. We have a separate form. It is not a part of a job application form, mm-hmm. and that form is kept confidential.
Yeah, excellent point. Really good point. So what you do in India is you have the job application form and then an extra declaration. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, brilliant, really good point, and probably I would recommend other countries do that as well. Depending on the country, in some countries it will literally be maybe one person seeing this form, but you're right, in other countries it could be multiple people. So thank you so much for sharing that. And Narita's also said about in Australia there's some regulations about sharing the form and the information within it. So maybe even after this kind of workshop, we'll separate these two forms out so that it's more appropriate for people to use in their country. Yeah. Thank you very much, everybody, for sharing. I think that's really helpful for all of us. Okay, the next bit on our kind of guidelines under recruitment selection is talking about shortlisting. So hopefully you can see on the screen. Again, this is kind of general recruitment practice. It's not necessarily specific to safeguarding, but we are encouraging everyone to use a standard process for shortlisting just to make sure it's fair. It's a fair procedure. I'll show you the kind of the template that we recommend in a minute, and I know that lots of you already use something similar. But it's really just making sure that 2 or 3 people are involved in shortlisting, again, to make it fair, to avoid any discrimination, and also just, you know, a different set of eyes can pick up on something that might be a concern. So whenever you do this, again, it's just checking the application forms fully completed. If someone has left out a whole section of the application form, such as the declarations, probably it's worth getting in contact with that applicant to ask them to complete it before taking them forward. So let me just close this one. So yes, this is the kind of shortlisting template that we have in place, and I know lots of you have something similar. Sorry, it doesn't all fit on a screen because there's so many columns. But yeah, if we go across, it's asking, you know, all of these things will come from the application form, you know, motivation, if references are there, if there's any issues with the criminal declaration. And then again, under the criteria and the desirable and essential, that's really coming from the person's specification. So it'll be things like length of experience, experience in budgeting, you know, language ability, etc., etc., etc. And then there's a space for comments from other people who are involved in the shortlisting, and then at the end a decision about whether to take them forward or not. I know lots of you have used this kind of process in the past. I'm thinking particularly, I know Bangladesh have used this. I've seen examples of using it. Has anyone any comments on this? Or probably what we'd really love to hear as well is any extra way you feel this shortlisting process could be improved? Because I know for some people you receive hundreds of applications and it's really difficult to go through them all thoroughly. So any tips that you'd like to share with anyone? I'm thinking Bangladesh or even PNG. I know you've also been through kind of a recruitment process recently.
In Bangladesh, I am using like this template, but I update it or modify it with the link of the position requirement in the job description or job circular. Requirement wise, I put this data on the particular column. So sometimes I didn't use all the columns, but depend on the requirement.
Yeah, thanks, Shima. And I know that you've you've said it's quite helpful, because when you get so many applications, it's impossible to kind of manage it in a different way. Doris in DRC, have you anything to add to that?
See, Jane, yes, in DRC also, I use Excel. In Excel, something like that. I use in Excel because all of us, all the team who will interview should have this one to have information for all participants. So I use it and put all the information for all who what they say what to call it, the one who applied. So I have all information in Excel, and this sheet of Excel will be shared with all the team who will be in the interview. So they have all information for the candidate. We have it, but maybe we should now improve it, or we will use this one. But we have in Excel something like that. I did in Excel something like that.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Doris. And I'm just now thinking, given Melvin's comment on the application form here in O, there's this column that we'd added to say about if there's any issues with criminal declarations, but also thinking about what Doris was sharing, and somehow often the shortlisting can often go around the office, you know, if several people are involved. But given what Melvin raised, I think probably if it is going to be shared, you would need to remove that column just for confidentiality, or anything else that's confidential. I think we need to protect the candidate as well. So yeah, that was a really good point. If there's anything confidential, let's keep it out of the shortlisting form and maybe just keep it with the HR person. I think, Dorothy, you shared in P&G, you've been using something similar, and that's been helpful. Yeah, fantastic. Okay, anyone else like to comment on kind of how they do shortlisting, or if they've got a better system than this? You know, we'd love to hear about that. No, I'm just curious. They say, what do you use in Myanmar?
Jen.
Sorry, go ahead, Shuma, and then maybe we can hear from Stacey.
Just clarity. In this column, stage 1, this is D, column D in your sheet.
Yeah.
So stage 1, email screening, initial assessment. Is it mean, suppose recently I'm doing some unusual CV, like I circulated project officer, but application come for the medical officer. So in that case, I primarily just discard that CV or separated the CV and not included in this sheet. This kind of assessment or different, or could you please any example?
Sure. Maybe Cindy, would you be happy to share how you've used that in the past?
This is quite an optional comment, and it's not really that one. It's sometimes when there are a lot of candidates who have applied. In some cases, you may go up to 50, 60 candidates at one shot. I'm not sure about Bangladesh's
100, 120.
Okay. So sometimes for good process, if you want to make a note, for me, it helps if I've made a note of who I've seen, who I've not seen, and particular some of them which are maybe quite good, but I'm not ready to fill in the rest of the form yet. I've put their name down, I put the application that is received, and I go here, yes, no, or yes or no, or maybe. It's just to help me to keep track. And then after that, I will continue adding it on once I've come to maybe the top 50 that I think are really good. So it's just the first person who looks through it. And sometimes it may not be you that has looked through it. Sometimes we do share email boxes as well, maybe between 2 HR people to help. And you may not be the person who goes through the initial first round. So it's really for that first person. And sometimes we have an HR officer, HR assistant who does things. They may go through, and we just want to keep track that they've actually responded and seen everyone that comes in and the ones that are most appropriate. And they might go yes or no. It goes on to the next stage, which is to assess them according to all the different criteria, really put it down and shortlist them. So it's optional if you want to take it out or not, but it's your process. All of these on the form, you should adapt on how you best use it and make sense to you as you recruit and as you shortlist. It has to be appropriate for you. But we just set it up with as much information as possible so that you know what some of the places are doing or not. But you can remove whatever is not applicable for you.
One more challenge. I would like to hear about other experiences on this challenge. Sometimes I get JPG, JPG formatted CV. You can't copy, or you need to print and then to put data on the Excel sheet or template. In that case, how do other manage JPG formatted CV?
Yeah. Well, have anybody else had that problem, and how have they overcome it? I'm thinking
JPG or
PDF.
Scanned.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
PDF sometimes possible, but scanned and JPG formatted CV.
I mean, my immediate response would be to get back to the applicant and ask them to provide it in a different format. But I'd love to hear what other people think. Anybody else got tips on that?
I think Natalie, Natalie was going to share something. Maybe she could share on this as well if you want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure I understand what the question is that we're talking about now. Is it that we can't use electronic signatures, or?
No, JPEG, CVs in picture format rather than a document format. You know, a picture form.
Is there a problem with that, or I mean, we accept them. I don't understand why it might be a problem.
Yeah, I think Shima was just saying if you've got 100 applications and you're trying to cut and paste information from the application form into this kind of shortlisting document, it's much easier if it comes in a format that you can cut and paste. Whereas if it's a JPEG or something, you kind of have to type it out. And Shima was saying if you've got 100 applications, that takes quite a lot of time and effort from the HR person.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I guess. Well, I guess we try if that was a problem, we'd ask them to send it in a different format. But what I was going to say is that like this list, like we've used it quite a lot now over 3 or 4 years, like different styles. This is the latest one, but we used a simpler version before, but it really just helped to be objective. Like when you're looking at hundreds of CVs, like it just becomes a blur and you think, oh, that person sounds good, and is this one better than that one? So this really helps to objectively look at each one and see, okay, yes, they did meet that or they didn't meet that, and then it I think it helps you to shortlist according to the skills and the value of the person, and not be blinded by, oh, that CV looks really nice and that CV that looks like they didn't put much time into it, but really looking at the qualities of the person when you're selecting.
Yeah, it's a great point, Nat. And I've seen some people, or in some organizations, they don't even include the applicant name on this form. They might just name each applicant like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because in some contexts the person's name may even open them up to discrimination. So it's also thinking about if that's something you want to keep it as, as blind, as neutral a process as possible. You could remove things like that as well. I know Doris, DRC Doris, had a comment, and then I'd love to hear from Say, just because I know you've done a lot of recruitment too, and then maybe we'll move on to the next bit. So Doris and Say, do you want to go ahead?
Yes, recently we have done
I want to say that I could see that you write also.
Okay, Say, you go ahead. Sorry, Doris, it's my fault.
Sorry. Okay. For the 100 of CVs, sometimes it's hard to put in the Excel file all the information. So what we have recently done is in the Excel format, we try to just put the short, if that is the address also, we won't put the full address. Only check if that's in our criteria, like if we recruit for Yangon and someone apply from other locations, if that is not a qualified CV, we won't put all the details in. So that by putting entering the data, it is like one of the filtering also, that if not the qualified CV will be left out, although the name and the number will be there. We know that we couldn't go into details for certain kind of CV because of the we have already listed out the person's specifications already, but it's not included there. Especially in this COVID times, a lot of people applied for the positions, but the backgrounds, educations, or the criteria might not be the things that we require also. So we try to shortlist that from that also.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're kind of making it work for you as practically as possible. Yeah. Okay, Doris. Sorry about that. Would you like to share now? Okay, Doris, can you maybe, just can't hear you yet.
Could you follow me?
Yes.
You want me to repeat, or you already hear what I say?
No, sorry, we didn't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so I'm saying that I could see that you write also the reference. And the reference is very important for us because I didn't see that. Because in Congo, what we do is to go to see the former, we don't call, we go till there and see what the former employee, even in the church, because I saw also in the form that you write reference for the church. Yeah, we go in the church. For example, for our driver, I went till to see the pastor Sunday. And this is a kind of what to say. We need a reference, and if in the form, the candidate didn't write a reference, and then we see that something is wrong, and it's very, very important for us because we go and see where he indicated, and we go and see a former employee or a church, and we see a pastor. And also, we ask her, the pastor, to write something as a recommendation that we oblige. And also, I want to say the other thing for the salary. I said that it's not comfortable. I don't know, in DRC, more candidates don't like to say, they are not comfortable to say their salary. If you ask how much you earn, you say, no, it's my secret. So even you ask what in the interview, can you tell us how much you want us to pay? He said, no, I can say. You are the boss. You should say. I can say something. So sometimes it's really uncomfortable to ask for the salary. And then I say, the salary is there in the column. Maybe it will not be comfortable for us to have this in the, but we will leave it. We will leave it. But I know that they will not answer there. Yeah. It's really a secret for. I don't know. In Congo, it's there. I don't know why it is a secret.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Yeah, and I think in other countries too, it's a very sensitive area, isn't it? And sometimes people may not even fully disclose the truth in that area. So yeah. Thank you, Doris, and thank you also for sharing about references and kind of the extra steps that you do to ensure that a reference is legitimate. I think that's really good, and I know we're going to talk about references a bit later today as well. So yeah, really relevant you're sharing. I think for now I'll just move on kind of to the last bit that I want to share just now. Sorry, get back to the right document. Yeah, so the last bit that I just want to share before I think we're going to have a wee break is this section about contacting applicants for interview. So obviously, normally this is the HR's responsibility. Normally it would be them that would either email or phone an applicant to say they've been successful to be invited to the interview. So what we're now suggesting, and again, some of you may already be doing this, but if not, we really encourage it, is whenever you invite someone to interview, to already share with them at that stage TLM's safeguarding policy and TLM's safeguarding code of conduct, of course, as well as the job description and person spec. And the reason we're asking people to kind of read the policy and look at the code of conduct before they even come to interview is, again, just so that it gives people an opportunity to be aware about TLM standards in safeguarding, and also to come to the interview with any questions they have about that or any concerns. So I think even like what Belle shared a while ago about, you know, seeing it in the application form, it already raises awareness. But then if someone is invited to interview and we expect them to have already read our policy and read our code of conduct, again, it's just a really good way to make sure they're on board with TLM's kind of standards in that area. And also then when it comes to the interview and when we ask questions about safeguarding, they're not going to be completely kind of dumbfounded by those questions. They'll have some kind of understanding of what we're expecting in that area. Yeah, I think so. That's just a really strong recommendation that we're having, and I know some people have already started to do that. The document, it's highlighted in yellow because I know the new versions of those policies are coming soon. But if you're doing any interviews in the next few weeks, then just please do share them, your current policies. Maybe now is a good time just to check with Damaris. Damaris, have you any update on when we would expect the new code of conduct or policy to be released?
Yes, thanks, Jane. As probably many of you know, the global policy and the code of conduct and the procedures have gone to all countries, country leaders, country chairs, and all designated safeguarding leads. So the 11th of September, I received feedback from 12 different countries, and really by tomorrow is my deadline where I would have integrated all the feedback from all countries, and I will be submitting basically the policy and rest of the documents to the international board. So that means that once it will be with the international board, it'll be up to their own timeline to approve it or challenge it. I don't expect that to take more than a month, which means it'll be submitted on the 1st of October. I would say by the end of October we will have a policy that is global, and obviously we will have kind of the work to kind of bring it to all countries. Some countries might have to kind of contextualize a little bit more than others, but in general it'll be a policy that will be ready to go. So one more month we suspect on the timeline of the international board. But we've gone through a very lengthy process of consultation that has taken really since January to now September. So it's 9 months where countless numbers of experts and people and countries have really inputted on it. And I thank you particularly many of the countries that are on this call, because we have received very meaningful feedback that has allowed us to make it hopefully work for all of us much better.
Brilliant. Thank you, Damaris. So just about another month or 6 weeks. It's not too long to wait on those new policies. Any questions about that? About this kind of idea that you would now be sharing the policy and code of conduct before interview? Any questions or comments, or are people generally fine with that? Okay, I take the silence as we're all okay with that. Great. Cindy, I think we're due for a break. How long do we roughly have for that?
Are we okay for 5 minutes? Everybody? Are we okay?
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
So a 5 minute
So-
5 minute break.
Well, 5 minutes, we'll turn off our cameras and then turn them back on after 5 minutes so that you'll see our faces here to welcome you back. Okay.
Okay.
All right. I'll see you in 5 minutes.
Get a cup of
That's
tea.
good.
Okay.